Welcome back once again to another episode of The Inquisitive Analyst. Today, we have Karaleise, and she's a practicing business analyst with over 14 years of experience in the business analysis field. She's the creator of Karaleise.com and the popular YouTube channel called Karaleise, where she shares very practical, very no-nonsense tips for anyone who's looking to break into or even to level up their business analysis skills or to go into the business analysis as a career. Whether it's agile methodology, whether it's writing requirements, even stakeholder management, even navigating the job market, the BA job market, Karaleise has built a community of a very aspiring and very seasoned BAs around her, what I call a down-to-earth and practical teaching style. She also runs the Back Office Club BA training program, and she hosts the Global BA Stand-Up, which is a free monthly event for the BA community. Joining us all the way from Atlanta, Georgia, USA. Welcome to the show, Karaleise.
Thank you so much, Marcus. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much. And I know in your intro you said it was 14 years, and I was like, oh my God, 14 years. It's actually 15 going on 16. It's been a while.
Time flies, definitely. And that's interesting too. Sometimes I ask people how long you've been in the field. They say 18, and you find out it's really 20 because time just flips.
Yeah.
One thing I would want to say is what I really like about what you're doing with business analysis is that you are a current practicing business analyst. So many of the examples that you provide on your YouTube channel and in your courses are all about the practical experiences that you use in work or at the office. So you're not teaching from a book. You're not teaching theory that people will rarely or never use. You're teaching something that people can use day to day.
Yeah, it's the best part of what I do, which I sometimes feel more pressure because of it though, is because I'm doing it every day. And then I'm like, oh my goodness, this will be a great nugget. And I share it on my blog or I share it on my YouTube channel, because as you're in the field, working in the field, there's just so much things that are changing. It's amazing. You think that, oh yeah, you learn this thing, you just practice and you're good. The BA role is it's evolving. It keeps evolving. And so you have to be in it to really be on top of what's going on. So I like to share whatever I'm learning as I'm working on these real world projects. So a lot of people like that, and I'm happy to be able to share that for sure.
Cool. And that's why I've asked you to be a guest on the show, because we want to look at a practical element of a software, Jira, which for some people who don't know, so Jira is used to be able to track projects. It's used by a lot of project managers, but it's also used by a lot of developers and business analysts because they have to be able to read a list of tickets to know what the task is that they have to do. So I thought, great, have Karaleise on to talk about how business analysts can use Jira more effectively.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Jira is one of those tools that if you're a BA and you're coming into the field, this is worth knowing. It's really worth knowing because so many teams are using it. And there's different applications of it, right? A lot of what we do as functional business analysts include building software using Jira, but there is ticket management, issue management, project management using Jira. So it's a very robust tool, and you're going to bump into it in your career. So it makes sense to kind of use it. And if you're already like an established BA, the hacks that we're going to talk about, or I call it hacks, but it's really like the productivity ways of using Jira. It's going to help you to just become more effective and more efficient in your role. So it's really definitely something that as a BA you should know about, because when you go into your interviews or if you're working in the field, you're going to bump into Jira for sure. So yeah.
It's interesting you mentioned that. About 10 years ago, I was on a project here in Calgary, and they were using Jira. It was the first time I was introduced to Jira. Back then, it was all about tickets. All they did were tickets. So it's come a long way from back in those days. And
I think it first was used for exactly that, for issue management, right? Just managing tickets and support issues, and it evolved into this thing that has become invaluable for teams. So it's not just ticket anymore. It's all user stories and managing backlogs and making sure that we're whether you're doing agile in terms of Scrum or you're doing Kanban, it's just a very versatile tool, and it solves a lot of the problems that we had, where things were you couldn't get updates and you don't know what's going on, but Jira just provides this really cool interface. And again, we're not being sponsored by Atlassian, right? But it's just that we are using the tool in our day-to-day jobs. And I personally have been very grateful for the features that Jira has provided because it's helped me to do my job so much better. So yeah, Atlassian is doing a good job there. Not, we're shouting them out, although we're not sponsored by them, but this is just something as a BA going to be, it's going to be important for you to know how to master as well.
Cool. Nice. Talking about mastering something, it's when you teach something, it's good to see it as well as talk about it. So let's have you show us some basic functionality of Jira. Let's look at customizing the business analyst workflow, for example. So in standard Jira, you might have columns that say to do, progress, done, but you advocate, and I've watched some of your videos, you kind of advocate for a more detailed flow. So let's maybe if you can share your screen and show us how you set up your statuses, like AC ready, review, approved to develop, all that kind of stuff to better track BA's progress. Let's see.
For sure, let's do that. So I do have on my website, karaleise.com, I'll just start with that. I do have this page here that you can go to karaleise.com/hacks, right? Jira hacks. And here you can see I have a slideshow. If you make this bigger, go to a slideshow to see all of what we're going to talk about today. So if you want to go back and see it and practice and really look at it detailed, you can always do that. So you can come here, click on this full screen, and you can go through everything that we're going to be talking about today. So the first thing we talked about was customizing your Jira flow. And I'm going to show you in the tool, but I wanted to show you this as well. So by default, Jira gives you these. Workflow actually is the way that you help to manage all the items that you have to work on and what statuses they are in. So it's a very, very useful feature that Jira has, and other tools like Azure DevOps has it too, but this is very, very helpful because you don't want to have to be calling your developers and calling your QA, okay, what status is to stick it in? With you having this feature, you're able to just look at the board, and I'll show you in a minute, but you look at the board and you can see exactly what the statuses are, and so you know what to do. You know what's next, what's coming up next. So you don't have to be having all of these status meetings. So by default, Jira will give you this status here, which is to do, in progress, and done. It's kind of around, normally to do and in progress and then done. And these any right here just indicates that any status can go to this status. So there's like a ordering of the statuses that you can set up. In this case, by just saying any, it means any status can go to any status. But that's way too simplified for us as BAs, because when something is in to do, does it mean that we're waiting for the PO? Does it mean that you as a BA need to do business analysis work? Does it mean that the developers have something they have to research? You don't know. To do is just so big. And then in progress, does it mean that you are working on it as a BA, or does it mean that the developers are working on it? Does it mean QA is testing it? Like these statuses, the bigger they are, the more, yes, it provides some information, but it's not enough for you to really manage it properly, right? So here's another example of more like a basic workflow that I would advocate. So we have to do, you have waiting for estimation, you have estimated, in business analysis, waiting for approval, right? And then you have done. So this is just another example of how you can break that out. But obviously, it's not, it's basic. It's still basic. So if you're doing something like this, you're still kind of, depending on the project too, how complex your project is, but it's still kind of, basic for BA. So it's good to keep it simple, but also by being too simple, you still create ambiguity and it's hard to manage. So let's look at what it looks like in Jira itself. So here's my project. So at the Back Office Club, we did a project on Task Manager app. We're building an app, and the members of the Back Office Club were working through the requirements, and then we did the whole life cycle, right? And eventually landed on creating user stories. And some of these are done by members, so not all of them are filled out. But we basically went through and we, talked about the stories, estimated the stories. We did the whole phase. So in this example, you can see here that these are the statuses. So as you're looking at the backlog, you can see what are the statuses of each of these stories, right? So this is a great way for you to see where we are. So for example, if I'm looking at the first couple of stories at the backlog, you can see still in to-do status. This one is in progress. This one is estimated. What does that mean? It means something. But from a PO perspective, from a BA perspective, from a developer perspective, they can just looking at the list learn a lot about what's going on with the work, right? So let's get a little bit deeper on how I had put this together. So in Jira, you can go into View Workflow, And typically, setting up the workflow is a task that the Jira administrator will do. It's not really something that you as the BA always have to do, but you should be having input into what are the decisions that they make in this workflow. So this is just an example of how this workflow set up, which is what I just showed you. So in here, we have a to-do, which means it's open. Like it just got created. The default state when you create a new story is in to-do. And then let's move done a little bit out. You can click on edit if you have admin rights. And let's say I want to move done, to the end. Okay. And I move this up. So in the edit, you can actually change it once you have like Jira admin privileges, which in this case, this is my personal Jira. So I do have that. But basically what you're able to do here is you're able to create these statuses, which says, what are the statuses I want my ticket to move through? So in this case, I might say it starts in to do, then I go in progress, like if I'm, like if somebody's working on it, or maybe I say after it's in to do, the first thing that's going to happen is that the BA will start working on it. So we put the BA task here. After the BA works on it, then we do refinements, right? So the next task might be, waiting for the PO to approve it. So we'll say, okay. And by the way, I'm just showing you how you can quickly, easily move these around, right? So it's pretty easy to work with.
Yep.
One of the things that you'll find is just finding space. In this case, I'm doing it all the way horizontal. I'll show you some of the examples where there's like, flow chart looking ways. But let's say I do from to do, then we go into, BA analysis. Maybe after the BA does it, then we do a refinement. The PO needs to approve it. So we don't just work on anything. We have to get the PO to sign off and say, okay, this is what we work on next. So once that's done, then maybe we do discussion with our developers and they get to estimate it and say how many story points or how many man days it's going to take. So that's waiting for estimation. Once it's been estimated, then we have estimated status. And this could be our definition of ready. So all the stories that are estimated would now be eligible to go in the sprint, right? And then once it's in the sprint, sorry, I keep pressing the wrong button. Then it's in progress. So now they start working on it. And then when they're done, you move it to done. So that could be it's still simple, but that's one example of how you could build your workflow. And again, all of these have any, which means any status can go to any other status. There's no or sequence in order that we impose on it, right? So for example, let's say I like this and I update my workflow and it's going to tell me I can update for all of these different items. And I say, sure, yeah, I want to update the status for all these items. And that becomes my new status, right? So if I go back to, let's see, I go back to my my board here. Let's say I have some stories in to do, and let's say I started working on it. I can move it to BA analysis. Okay. By the way, there's a color code to Jira. So all the statuses that you create that are in to do will be in gray. It's just automatic with Jira. You don't have control over these colors. Anything that's in progress, so you can rename, you can create new statuses and make them an in progress status. Those will be in blue, and anything that's done will be in green, right? So you can create different types of statuses that match your workflow, but they'll all be either of the category to do status, in progress status, or done status. That's one example. Let's look at another one. This is for a retail banking project that we did at the Back Office Club. Again, another example of real projects that we've been working on. And in this example, we had a different workflow. So in this example, I don't know, maybe I could make it bigger. I know that it's a little hard to read from so far. Let me see if that's better. Yeah, there we go. So in this example, we were building a retail banking and we had in scope to build the internal transfers feature. You know, when you go to your bank and you try to transfer account from, like your savings account to your checking account, we worked through all of that and we did an elaborate discussion and we had designs and we did a lot of work on that at the Back Office Club to practice and also for them to use real projects as they're learning how to become a BA. So in this example, let's look at the workflow here. It's a little bit more real world enterprise level workflow. So if I go to view workflow, I'll see a little bit more about how this was designed. And as you can see, it really gets a little bit more intricate. Okay. Mm-hmm. It's not just to do an in progress and a few statuses in progress and I know one done status. We have, when you create your first ticket, by default, it'll go into do. That's, we can also rename this. We can say, you know, open or something. We can always rename these. It's not a problem. Then we have a transition status, which means as you're moving from one status to the next, what's the action that causes you to move? So in this case, we have in analysis. So once the BA starts looking at it, we say the transition is that it's now in analysis, and the status that it will be in will be BA analysis. So let me just show you what that looks like real quick. So if I, these are all in the sprint. Let me try something. Okay. So for this example, this is where you see the name of the transition. And then this is the actual workflow status. So if I want to say this ticket that I'm looking at, which is calculate daily limits, if I want to transition it to say, okay, it's now in analysis, it's going to be analysis. So that helps you to just understand what this transition is for. And you need to name these statuses something very clear that anybody who's looking at the board can understand what are you talking about. So if I move this to in analysis, anybody looking at the board can know, okay, don't touch this ticket because the BA is working on it. It's in the BA analysis status. So that's the beauty of having these very defined workflow statuses, because you can help to communicate a lot from your backlog, from your list of work items, so that people don't have to be following up with you. What are you doing on this? How's this going? Where's the status? You can easily see just looking at the Jira board, right? So here we are. The first status is that we have in this project was BA analysis. And then there's a lot of things going on. So any status can go to BA analysis. But once you're in BA analysis, then you can go to two places. You can go in refinement, which means that now you've done your analysis, you want to refine it with the team, and then you go to ready for refinement, right? Or maybe you have some challenges with the design. And so you might say, okay, this analysis is done, but I need the UX designer to design the UI for this. And so you can put to, in design, right? And then from InDesign, you can say, okay, once the UX designer has completed their work, then it goes back to refinement. So maybe there might be communication between you and the designer, and you guys are aligned. So now we just need to refine it with the broader development team. So it just means that from business analysis status, I can either go in design or I can go ready for refinement. And if I'm in design, any status can go to InDesign from anywhere else. That's why you have the any. But for ready for refinement, it has to come from the BA analysis, right? In other words, only the BA status can go to refinement. So there's some, little ordering that you can enforce if you really want to. The easiest way is to make any status go anywhere. But sometimes, for example, if I already have something in QA, I don't want you to put it all the way back to let's say, in refinement, because I've already done some of that, right? So you want to make sure they don't end up messing up the workflow. So you can enforce it if you want. Okay. So
no, go ahead.
From ready for refinement, if the refinement is complete, then you get to ready for estimation. But maybe when you get to estimation, somebody asks a question, they have something came up that you didn't know before. I know it has to go back to refinement. Maybe they're like, oh, we didn't consider this business case. Maybe we didn't consider this use case, this edge case. We need to go back to the BA. The BA needs to go back and discuss with the stakeholders before we can estimate, or before it's even ready for estimation. So that is the loop right here. Did you have a question on this?
No, go ahead. I'll ask you when you finish.
All right. So once it's ready for estimation, it's not estimated yet. It's now been, in other words, this is the end of your BA work. Your BA work has been finished. It's now in the hands of the devs. The devs need to look at it and say how many story points it's going to take. So ready for estimation goes to estimated. So this is normally what you do in your refinement sessions or your sprint planning. Sometimes people do it on the day of sprint planning. They estimate it and bring it into the sprint. So again, this is your definition of ready. Once it's estimated, mean that all the discussion have been had, you agree on what you're building, you've agreed on the design, everything is great. They just need to figure out how to do it. And they've come up with how long it's going to take or how much effort it's going to take. And they've estimated. So now it can go into your sprint. Once it's in the sprint, then when the developer picks it up, it goes in progress. Sometimes, even if after you've done your best effort and you've talked to all your stakeholders and you've done your best analysis, when they actually get into writing code, they uncover something. And then they're like, there's some new scope here, something added, or even the PO could come in and say, we want to do something. I'll give you an example happened to me this morning. We were building a contact page, and you're using the contact to make payments, like for Interact, and those in the US would use Zelle or something like that. And the phone number format that we had, we didn't have the +1 in the beginning. For some reason, the requirements didn't have the +1. And then when they got into the development, they're like, okay, but the country code, is it always going to be +1? Or are we going to allow, different country selection will give you different country code? And so we found out, okay, well, because we're building for Canada, specifically in this case, it needed to be +1. But if it's a different country, we need to allow them to choose the country dropdown. So that was just missed somehow. We had in the requirements that you need to be able to validate the phone number, but it wasn't specific enough about all the different stuff, right? So that was something one of my colleagues uncovered. So we had to go back and we didn't change the story because they're already in development. We kind of wrote another story to kind of update everywhere else that we display phone numbers to make sure it shows the +1 and it shows the country selection where necessary, right? So sometimes it happens, sometimes it happens. You have to go in and make changes. So in this case, though, maybe you want to say, okay, the developer hasn't gotten far in the code, so we're going to update the existing story if that's something that your POs want to do. In that case, you'll move it from in progress back to estimated, because they have to now go re-estimate how much additional effort is going to take to add this new scope. So that's why you have this line that can go back here, which means I can move from in progress back to estimated, but I can't move from in progress back to refinement, for example. I have to go to estimated, and then from estimated, maybe go back to InDesign or something, because since this can take any other status. Now, if everything goes well and the developers write the code, then it can go to testing. So once they're finished writing their code and they do their PR reviews or whatever, then they put it ready for test. This is the cue for QA to start picking up the story. So QA now would be trained that we don't pick up stories that are in progress, because the developer could still be working on it. We'll pick up story that's ready for test, because developers have to look at write the code. They have to do their peer review. They have to deploy it to a test environment for them to be able to access it, to be able to test. So this is the signal. This status is what the QAs are waiting for to know when they need to start working on this ticket, right? So once it's ready for test, then when the QA because you could have a lot of them in ready for test. Once the QA becomes available, they pick up the story, they move it to testing, in test, which means don't edit anything because I'm testing it right now. I'm testing against your requirement, your acceptance criteria. So that's a great way for you to not have confusion. And then once the test is passed, hopefully it's passed, then you move it to done. And then if it's failed, obviously you have to go back in progress. They have to fix the code, deploy again, tell you when it's ready, and you do the whole loop again. Now, this done status is also simplified, because in the real enterprise companies, done is not just one status. It could be done in terms of code, like dev done. And then after that, maybe you need to have documentation for your help files, for your website. So you have documentation done. And then you may have to deploy to some kind of special environment for them to do UAT. And you can say, okay, done and deployed to the UAT environment, and then published, like it's now in the realm of their customers, and there's another done status. So all of those could be variations of done status. But for simplicity, and because this was at the back office club, we just use one done status. But this is an example, and it gets even worse than this. I've done videos where there's even more statuses, right? But this is a typical example of how you create a more robust workflow, because you have to capture things that are happening on the ticket so that people can know what's going on, and they can just look at the list. They look at the board and it tells them a lot. As a PO, I come in here, let's say I'm looking at my sprint, I know everything in my sprint is already estimated, right? And maybe there might be some where the developers are started to work. So for example, let's say this one, the developer picked it up, we move it in progress. So now you can look at this and say, okay, what are we working on right now? Oh, we have 2 tickets we're working on right now. It's so good compared to where we were like at the beginning, like early 2000s, even early to 2010.
I know. It's superb. So you've taken us through this beautiful workflow. We've seen a bit of the scope and, in a sense, moving from one stage to another stage. So what if, say, a bug pops up for one of these stages? So one of these items in your backlog, or one of the items outside of the backlog. Say there's a bug that appears. Could you demonstrate how the move function? And I know you were showing us how to move from to do to done Is that the
Yeah.
same function that you would use to show how to change an issue type without losing the requirements or the comments that have already been documented?
No, and it's a good example to use bugs because and by the way, this is a Jira board that's available to all the members of the back office club. So we have an example of just like bugs. It's a project that just shows you examples of bugs. So for example, let's say I have, when you say move, you mean you're trying to move from one type of issue to another type, right? So it's a bug.
Correct.
Okay. So let's say that let's just pick this one. Let's say we had this bug that was created, but this happens a lot, by the way, where sometimes when they're testing, they think something is a bug, and then when you check it out, it's really actually it's supposed to be how it should work, right? So we uncover what is a missed requirement actually, and so we need to go create a user story to actually add that into the feature so that we can resolve this issue. So let's say that happened, and this is a bug, and you can know it's a bug because it has this little, little bug, little red bug icon right there. But what you can do is, and there are many ways to do things in Jira. So I'm showing you like the shortcut, but there's one of the things I like about Jira is that, as you can see, things pop out and you're not suddenly navigated away to a new page. You click on something, you can see it side by side. There are many different, paths to get the same thing done. So I'm just showing you the quickest one that I use.
Sure.
So you can go, like, you open the bug. This is bug 6, right? And you can go to these quick action buttons here. And if you choose move, now this is something that people get stuck on because you're thinking, I want to change from a bug to a story because now I need to, have development work to build this new, this missed requirement. And you might look at this list and you're like, okay, where is change, right? So it's not, one thing I would say, it's not very intuitive that this is where you should go, but this is where it is, right? So you have to go to move. And when you click on move, Jira will show you the screen, and there's like 2 steps. It's a pretty quick thing actually. So the name of the project is actually bugs, which is kind of funny. But it will show you the name of your project, and then it will show you the type, the issue type that it is right now. So right now it's a bug, and I want to move it to not being a bug anymore to make it into a story, right? So I can go to story, and I'm saying move from this project, move this item, which is the exact bug 6 that we have here, and I'm moving it from a bug to a story. And then I click on next, and then once I click on next, it kind of just confirms, and then I click another next, and that's it. Yeah, you have a confirmation page here, and you can do this at bulk also. It doesn't have to be one by one. And then it just, it automatically does it, refreshes, and once you click on acknowledge, then there you go. You have the new bug. And by the way, yeah, so now it's a story, right? So this is indicated by this little green icon here. Another way that you could change it is you could just click on it, right? And I could have just moved it back to, let's say I want to make it a task. And right now it's a story, I could make it a task. So I could click on task and that would be it, right? So there's many ways to do it. And that's one of the things I really enjoy about Jira is that you can, whichever way makes the most sense for you. Let's say I was already in the full view of the bug. It will just be quick to just go to the top and change it. Or if I was on the list view, like the backlog view, I could just go to the side and use that, 3-dot menu. So it's a lot of the options are available in multiple places, which makes it much easier for you to navigate. And you have to navigate quickly because remember, we're working on these tickets, we're in big meetings, people are discussing, ideas are flowing. You don't want to be impeded by your software, right? You want your software to work alongside the rhythm of how people are discussing and coming up with new ideas and trying to do things, and you as a BA trying to capture that while they're talking. So the fact that you have all of these different ways of navigating and being able to do the same task in different places, I find that to be extremely valuable. That's one of the reasons why, kind of like Jira.
Why you're a Jira rock star. And I liked how you moved us through this real world example of Jira, and the benefits that come and how you can move from a bug to a different status and back and forth. So maybe this bug that you've shown us, would this be a good example of a structured story, a well-structured story?
No, because for the way that we write bugs, and this is kind of bad, sometimes the bugs are just like people just throw information on the page, right? This is just about go fix it, right? Because it doesn't go to the same rigor as a story. And normally with the bugs, you're talking about what is the expected behavior and what is the
Right.
actual behavior. So you want to point out what are the steps that you took, right? And what your results were. This is what I expected to get, and this is what I actually got, so that the person can
Got it.
reproduce the bug and find out where the problem is and solve it. So that's kind of the way that we write bugs. If you want to see a more structured story, and by the way, all of this is in this
Okay.
Jira hacks thing. I had it on one of these pages. Let me show you. I'm going to go to it. I just want to remember what the story was. So this is an example of changing the issue type. Yeah, here's an example about how we structure the user story, right? So in Jira itself, if I go back to my backlog and I find a story like this one, I believe. Yeah, this is a good one. So let me open. And by the way, once it's open side by side and you're like, oh, I want to see more. Like I want the whole page. You just need to click on the link to the story here, or you can click on this little arrow that makes it big, right? So you don't always have to work in the side by side view. If you want to take up the whole real estate, then you can. So this is an example of a story that we wrote at the Back Office Club when we were building our Task Manager app. And it says the ability to view tasks in list view. So in our example, we had a UI that allowed you to see a task either as a card, like a card view, or we could show a list view like what we've been looking at in the backlog view, right? Everything is listed together. So the first thing you notice in how we wrote the story is it starts with a verb, right? And it tells them, what does this story do? So when you read it, it's the ability to view tasks in list view. That should sum up what the body of the rest of the story is. What I see a lot of new BAs do, and I think it's probably just because they're new, is that they'll put the actual user story as a title. They'll say, as a user, I want to be able to see the list view so that blah, blah, blah. And they put that in this section, which it's not necessarily wrong, but the point of this title is to help the PO as they're scanning through a long list. So for example, if I am on the backlog view and I'm trying to determine how to prioritize what we're going to work on next, I don't want to see a long discussion. I want you to get to the point real quick. Like, what is the story about? Okay, ability to add attachment, send task reminder, view list view, ability to create tasks. Okay, maybe this is more important. I can move that up. So I don't have to click into each one to figure out what it does, right? So your point of putting a good title in the way you write your stories is that the title encapsulates what the body of the user story is about. And it normally starts with a verb because you're building something, you're creating new features. It's an action item that the user is able to do when they're done, when you're done building out your story. So we always start with a verb. You can use ability to, show or whatever indicates that some action is happening. And then as a best practice that we practice at the Back Office Club, this is not to say you can't do it otherwise, but what we practice is we like to put a little blurb at the beginning of the story to explain what the story does, right? Because in my experience, people are moving through these stories so fast. There's so much pressure on POs to approve. There's pressure on the developers to understand it quickly. And sometimes they're skipping through stories. You just want to know, okay, what's the gist? I don't want to read through the whole thing, right? So if you can find maybe one or two lines that really summarize what does this story accomplish, I find that to be valuable for the POs especially. So we'll just summarize and say this story handles the ability for user to view their task list. That's it, right? So then we start off with the user story format that we're all used to. Let me zoom in again so we can see it properly. So as a user, I want to be able to view my task on the app that we had. We call it Tabit, right? Tabit Task Manager mobile app, so that I can see all the tasks I need to complete for the day. So for us, we really want to stick with the formal, format of a user story because there's a reason why they created it, right? Because you want to show the value to the user, and that part is very important. People leave that off, but you need to put it there. Why are you doing this? It's like a reminder that the reason why we're creating this feature is so that we can accomplish this thing, right? Which it might be small, it might be a small thing, but every small thing helps to make the app, in this case, you're building a mobile app, much more robust, right? So it helps you as a PA to remind yourself, why are we doing it again? So you don't just build things to build things. You're building things that have a value, right? That has a benefit. So that's why we want to make sure we keep that. And then we have our acceptance criteria. Now, I have used different formats for acceptance criteria throughout my career. I am not necessarily married to any one. Right now, Gherkin format is very popular because people just like structure, right? They just like to have, okay, you have to write it this way, this way. But you can write it as long as it's clear and it accomplishes the outcome and it's not too verbose and there's not a lot of justification going on, it's fine. Because sometimes I use bullet points, whatever helps to make it easier for the user, I do that. But Gherkin format has become very popular format, so I do use that too, especially in the back office when I'm trying to train people to become better BAs. I use what's common, right? So in this case, we have, given that I have logged into the mobile app, so you always start with the starting point. Where does this story pick up? Okay, it picks up where you're logged in. Okay, that's the first in our example. In other cases, it might pick up somewhere else, but in our example, we're talking about viewing the list of tasks, and the first place you'd have to go to get that is to be logged in. So you start off with given, and the given statement must tell you where you're starting. And then given that I have logged into the mobile app and I have created a task, when I click the task list view, because there's an option in our design that has a list view, then I will see a screen to view my task. Details of the screen will include. So there are, there's a typo here. So when you have very UI intensive user stories, sometimes people get stuck on how do I get into the details of the UI? You just do. You just say, okay, when I do this and I do that, then I'll see the screen. But you have to tell them what's on the screen because that's what they're building. The screen needs to have a header, it needs to have a table, it needs to have a button, it needs to have whatever. So you can go into all of that. In this case, I do it with bullet points, but you could also say, and I see a black back arrow, and I see 3 dots, and I see header text. So you could find different ways to incorporate that into Gherkin format. But the point is that it's there, okay, that you're not missing features. And one more thing also is that the feature need to match the design. Whenever you have a heavy UX design functionality you're building, you cannot have your AC saying something different than what's on your design. This is going to confuse people. So you have to make sure if there's a discrepancy, you either change your AC or you communicate with your UX designer, hey, you need to change your design because it needs to do this. So that's kind of the format of how we write our user stories.
Good. No, that's good. That's pretty good, and it's a high enough level for everyone to be able to understand at this stage. I know there's a lot more depth to it, but you've summarized it quite well. Another question, and I like the fact you've mentioned you use bullet points versus a numbered list or unnumbered list. Let's look at how you can embed a live design tool like Figma, and you can embed it either at the epic level, you can embed it at the story level. Let's see how you can embed that. Do you have a
Yeah, so there are many ways to do it, right? So the simplest way is to just take a screenshot and just add it as a design element. So for example, I could go here, add image, and then I could click on upload, find an image on my computer and add it, and it will just add to the bottom of my, or add wherever I have the cursor. So that's one way. But the problem is that when the designs change, then you have an old, image, and then you have to go remove it and then add a new one, and then the design. And I have suffered under this, where we're building something, we all thought it was done. I wrote the stories, we're all ready, and the next thing you know, a change comes in, the design change, but it affects everything else. So now I have to go update all of my stories because this one change happened here, which is not going to affect all the other stories and all the other designs. So what I've done in this particular instance of Jira, in my corporate job, we have a different way of doing this. But in this instance of Jira, we added a add-on for Figma. So you can, if you're a Jira administrator, you can go in and you can look for Figma. You look for Figma add-ons. The one that we have allows us to add design. So when you go to plus here, if you had just a screenshot, you could add it as an attachment. You can add a link, but because we have this add-on inside of our Jira instance, we have this feature called Add Design. And I don't think I have my Jira open, my Figma open. But once you click on Add Design, it creates a URL field here, and I would paste the URL field. I don't have my Figma open, but I already had it added from before. So this is the design from our Figma. So it's pulling that in. So as the designers are making changes in the live Figma, it's pulling in the live feed here. So I don't
Right.
have to go back and remove the old attachment and add a new
Right.
one. Everything that I need is here. And if I want to see it better, I hope I can click in it. If I want to remove it, I just click on the
Yeah.
on link right here. But you will be able to go in, you can move in, you can zoom. If you want to see all the design, this is our design for our Tabit app that we were building together at the Back Office Club. So
Nice.
you can see all of our designs here. So it just helps you to, and you can do it by one screen at a time also, but it just helps you to not have to constantly going back and forth trying to update the designs, right? It just pulls it in, and I can stay from within Jira and see
Mhm.
my designs. Like in this case, I haven't left Jira yet. I'm still in Jira. And now I can, talk about this design. I can ask a question to our developers. Okay, let's say we have a problem with this image. Can we get this image in? The button is red. Maybe we want to make the button square. I don't know. Whatever the problems are, we can do it here without me having to leave the app. And so that does two things. It helps my refinements to be more smooth. And it also prevents me from having to do double work by deleting old designs and coming back.
Yeah.
So that's
That's
one
great.
thing. I think there are other add-ons that you can use. This is when we went, we had seen a lot more other ones. This one is free actually, so
Mhm.
it's even better. I need to find
Nice.
the name of it. But there
Yeah,
are many of them in the marketplace for
right.
Atlassian. So
And
yeah.
and what I like is, and for those who may not know, Figma is like Canva. It's a design tool, and here you're showing a design of a mobile app. I suspect that's what it is,
Yes.
because it looks like it's more vertical.
Yes.
And so you can design the stages in each mobile app. So when you click on enter or log in, what screen does it take you to? And then you show the next screen. And then if you press on this link, what other screen does it take you to? And you've
Yes.
shown the third screen, and so on and so forth. So yeah, kudos to that. And I think that Figma is a great design tool. It's used in startups, it's used in small to medium sized companies. I don't know if large enterprise companies use Figma. I don't know. Usually sometimes there's more sophisticated tools, but they pretty much do the same thing. It's sort of I like to think of it as a more sophisticated version of Photoshop. So you
Oh
can
yeah,
design.
I think the Figma has totally taken over.
Oh,
A couple years ago, when I was starting out with designing and dabbling in that for some of my requirements, we used to use a myriad of tools. We had um, Zeppelin, we had InVision, we had so many different tools that was in the marketplace. But I think they've kind of a lot of them have converged on Figma because it just took over the market. It had so many
yeah,
more features. It's so much more embeddable. There you can do comments. So I find large organizations are using Figma much more than
oh
other
yeah,
tools, and
yeah.
it's kind of eating up the market right now. Sure.
Yeah, and the cool thing about Figma, I just want to mention for those out there as well, and I think Canva does it too. You can have multiple people editing the same document at the same time. So I was on a
Mhm.
project where people were in India, they were in Toronto, they were in
Yeah.
Africa, and we're all editing on it. The developer was in India, the designer was in the States, this kind of thing. And you can see at the top, usually at the top right-hand corner, you can see the list of
You
all the
can
people
see
that have
who's in
logged in,
there.
like you would, yeah, on a Google sheet. And as they move their mouse, you can actually see exactly what they're doing at the same time, which is superb because all the updates are done in real time. You don't have to wait to refresh your screen. One person
Yes.
to edit, refresh, one person to edit, refresh. They're all done at the same time, which is, I think it makes work much more visible. It's
Yes.
there's what everyone's doing at the same time. So you can't get away with just slacking around. You've got to get your work done, basically.
So I want to give you a little crash course in Figma. So this is the Figma interface that we just accessed from Jira. You're
Yep.
talking about here. So as more people, right now it's just me, but as more people come in, you'll see their little avatars, and we could all be in here. Right now, I have comments from one of my. This is like a couple years ago or a year ago. One of my students were working on it, looking at stuff, asking questions. So you could come in here and you could see all these mouses moving around because
Yeah.
everybody from everywhere is in here and editing at the same time,
Yeah.
and you're all in the same instance of it, right? So that's one of the things that makes it different from other apps and makes it much more easier to use. And it's the learning curve to me is very short. I didn't have to learn a lot of stuff. And by the way, we as BAs are not really designing out a full app, right? We're just going
Mhm.
in there checking to make sure, okay, this is what it looks like. This is the behavior. Is it matching our business requirements? So we don't really need to do much more than leave comments and maybe walk through a prototype like you're talking before. I don't have it in here now, but I could set up clickable areas in here and I could go
Mhm.
click, 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 and then I could basically mimic
Yes.
how the app would work.
Yes. True.
You can go through different pages. You can, it's just, there's a lot of cool things in here. Like, say, for example, this is my landing page, manage task pages. This is some of
Mhm.
the designs that we were working on at the back office club. So you can have like a full layout of how the screens will move from one screen to the next. Just a lot of good things that you can do very quickly
Yeah.
in
No, it's
Figma.
very
So
good.
that's some
Very
of the
good.
good things. Yeah,
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 and I like that. This I know what you're talking about when you can basically run through the app from end to end, clicking it, and it would take you to the next screen. So you can do that
yes,
in Figma. You don't have to scroll. You click
yes.
on the actual image, and it will take you to the next image right away. So that's
Yes,
good.
it's so valuable, and you don't really fully understand yet until you do it how this clears up a lot of questions for
Hmm.
developers and give them the full picture of where you're going, so that now when they get the stories, they're kind of aware of, okay, this is what we're doing, this is why we're doing it, this is how it's supposed to behave. It really helps create clarity when they can see something. So it's fine to talk about it, but when you can create a design and that design is clickable and you can walk through the whole thing and mimic how it should behave, it's really good. But I would say that
Yeah.
normally the UX designer does all of that part, at least in the
Yes.
projects I've worked
True.
on. And
True. No, that's true.
I'm just here to make sure that it matches the requirements and we're not doing anything that we're not supposed to be doing and it's working out well and we have the right fields and the fields are the right type, etc. But the
True.
actual
True.
mechanics of doing it is typically the UX designer. Yeah.
True. This is superb. I got a quick question for you just to end it all before we
Yeah.
go. If you have a task, how do you clone a task? Like you don't want to create a
Oh,
task from start, so just
yeah.
clone a previous task and you can just edit it. How does one do that?
Yeah. So let me find a task that has some comments or something in, yeah, here's one that has comments. Actually, let me find one from this project, which is the retail banking project. Um, do we have any tasks in the board? Yeah, this is our board. Okay. The reason why is because when you clone a task, you can decide if you want to clone everything, like the links, the sprint, the comments, or you just want to clone the actual details within the task or user story, right? So the clone is similar to how we just did the move, the change. So let's say I have let's pick a story here. Say, okay, let's go ability to move. By the way, if you notice, we have in bracket web backend, BE stands for backend,
Hmm.
spike. These are all just other context clues. So that when you look
Naming
at it's a
convention.
naming convention we came up with at the back of the stuff to say, okay, this is because we had web and mobile, we had backend stories. So we wanted to make sure that as I'm looking at it, I can tell this is for the front end, this is a web story, this is a mobile story, it's Android story or iOS, and this is for the back end or whatever. So you can tell just when looking at the name of the story what it's about. And those are just some other little, I would say, little tricks that we use to just become much more effective and more efficient in how we work. So let's say we have this story, okay? And it turns out that we need to have an exact same story for this for mobile, for example. And I already have it for web. Let me just copy it for mobile. So I can go here to the same three dots and I can choose clone. So again, the way they've worded it may not be the most intuitive because you might want to look for duplicate or copy or something, but they just
Mhm.
use the word clone. That's what they have. So you can click on clone and it'll ask you, first of all, it's going to put the word clone in front because you can't have two stories with the same name. So it's going to put clone. Now, if I want to call it something different, I could leave it as is and I know it's a clone, or I could just say, okay, well, this is going to be for mobile. So I rename it mobile and I move it out, right? And it's, if you want to change who's assigned to it, you could do that. Right now, I'm the only person in this instance, so it doesn't make any difference. And you can say, what do I want to include in the duplication? Do I want to include links? So whatever links I have in the store, I want to include that. do I want to clone it for the sprint value? So right now let's say we're in sprint 5. We want to include that in there. And this story doesn't have comments. If I had comments, it'll ask me also, do I want to copy the comments also? So you can look at what to include. And I may say, okay, just include the links. Maybe I don't want to include in the sprint because I got to go refine it and I got to do all that stuff. So once I do that and I click on clone, it's going to create a duplicate. And it says here, cloning this story. And then when it's done, it gives you a little pop-up that says, this is the story that's been cloned. You can click on the link. And there you go. Everything that was in the previous story is there, including the labels. Whatever fields that you had on this side would be there as well. And then it has the links, and it also has a clone. It'll always automatically clone. It's always automatically link where it's cloned from and tell you that this is under clone. Right? So that's it's pretty automatic.
That's it. I'm a user. I'm a business analyst. I want to up my skills in Jira. I want to join your either the stand-up group or the back office club. Where can I go?
Yeah, so we have the Back Office Club website. So we can go, let me stop sharing. We can go to backofficeclub.org, which is where we have details about our program. You can also check me out on YouTube. So I have a YouTube channel called Karaleise, and there you'll see a lot of the things that I'm talking about and videos. And I have a lot of, I think I have I do have a playlist on Jira also. So if you want to learn more about Jira and other real world examples of how to use Jira, you can do that. So yeah, if you want to join the Back Office Club, backofficeclub.org. You can also find some of my blog articles on karaleise.com. And you can find information about the Global BA Stand-Up, which we have every month. The first Monday of every month, we meet with BA professional and we talk about different BA topics. Last month, we had Imal, which was great. And Imal talked about, he gave us some practical uses of AI for BA with the exact, how to prime the AI, the exact prompt. It was so useful. So you can join every month on the first Monday to just get practical knowledge and learn how to, up your skill as a BA. For sure.
It's all about upping the skills. Thanks very much, Karaleise. It's great having you on the show. And I noticed that just underneath your name, it's karaleise.com. In case people want to know how to spell Karaleise, Karaleise. Karaleise.com. Check it out and check out the Back Office Club. Thank you very much for being a guest on the show.
Yeah, it was awesome being here. Thank you so much for having me. And to everybody out there who's trying to become a BA, it's a great career. And I encourage you to learn as much as you can, both for Marcus and for myself, and embark on a very fulfilling career.
Superb. All right. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.
Right.
Bye.
Bye.